I'm so happy to announce my new album, Happy Together. When my orchestra and I were finally able to get together, we shared so much. I always had a dream when I was a small boy. My first teacher was a blonde 18-year-old girl.
After decades of filling concert halls with the joyous sounds of waltzes and serenading millions across the globe, the world's most beloved violinist may soon take his final bow. André Rieu, the charismatic Dutch maestro who transformed classical music into accessible entertainment for the masses, has shocked fans worldwide with hints of his departure from the stage. The man who built an empire on the elegant three-quarter time of Strauss waltzes now faces a different kind of rhythm, the inevitable march of time and health concerns that wait for no one, not even music's most exuberant ambassador. Behind the glittering costumes and sold-out world tours lies a deeply personal struggle that has finally reached its crescendo. What led this musical revolutionary to this heart-wrenching decision? And what does it mean for the future of the Johann Strauss Orchestra he so lovingly created? The answer reveals not just the end of an era, but a poignant human story about passion, sacrifice, and knowing when to play the final note. Rise to fame. The story of André Rieu begins far from the world's grand stages, in the modest surroundings of Maastricht, Netherlands, where he was born in 1949. The son of a symphony conductor, young André was immersed in classical music from birth, taking up the violin at just 5 years old. Despite his father's musical prominence, André's path to stardom was neither immediate nor assured. He studied at conservatories in Liège and Maastricht, developing technical mastery while simultaneously nurturing a vision that would eventually revolutionize classical performance. The traditional approach to classical music, formal, austere, and increasingly disconnected from mainstream audiences, troubled the young violinist who saw in the waltzes of Johann Strauss a joy and accessibility that modern classical concerts often lacked. In 1987, at an age when many musicians have already peaked, Rieu took a monumental risk, founding the Johann Strauss Orchestra with just 12 members. The early years were lean, with skeptics dismissing his approach as gimmicky or superficial. Classical purists scoffed at his theatrical performances, elaborate costumes, and emphasis on audience connection, precisely the elements that would later become his trademark. But André possessed something more valuable than early acclaim: an unwavering belief that classical music could be both authentic and joyful, sophisticated yet accessible. By the mid-1990s, his vision began to bear fruit as television appearances in Europe showcased his charismatic blend of musical excellence and entertainment. Audiences responded with overwhelming enthusiasm to this violinist who played with technical brilliance while smiling, dancing, and connecting with them on a personal level. The orchestra grew to over 60 members, and what began as a modest ensemble transformed into a global phenomenon that would eventually sell over 40 million albums worldwide. Musical revolution. What André Rieu accomplished in the world of classical music amounts to nothing short of a revolution. In an era when symphony orchestras worldwide were facing declining attendance and aging audiences, Rieu created something unprecedented: a classical music experience that regularly sold out stadiums and topped pop music charts. His formula defied conventional wisdom in the classical world. Where tradition dictated solemnity and restraint, Rieu brought warmth and spontaneity. Where classical concerts enforced rigid boundaries between performers and audience, he tore down the invisible wall, inviting listeners to dance in the aisles, sing along, and become part of the performance. His concerts became spectacular events, featuring elaborate sets recreating Viennese ballrooms, working fountains, ice rinks, and even life-sized castles. Critics might have dismissed these elements as mere spectacle, but they missed the deeper significance. Rieu was returning classical music to its roots as popular entertainment. The waltzes that formed the core of his repertoire were, after all, the pop music of their day in 19th century Vienna. Under Rieu's bow, these pieces regained their original vitality and appeal. His impact extended far beyond Europe. In countries with little classical music tradition, from China to Brazil, Rieu's tours became cultural phenomena. His PBS specials in America introduced millions to classical repertoire they might otherwise never have encountered. Perhaps most remarkably, he achieved this without compromising musical standards. His orchestra performs with technical excellence and genuine emotion. The violinist's business acumen proved as exceptional as his musical talent. He established his own production company, managing everything from concert production to recordings, creating an independent empire that gave him complete artistic control. At its peak, his annual Maastricht concerts in his hometown drew over 100,000 visitors from more than 80 countries, generating millions for the local economy. The King of Waltz had transformed a niche musical genre into a global entertainment juggernaut. Behind the spotlight, while audiences worldwide have come to know André Rieu's public persona, the smiling maestro in elegant attire, bowing flamboyantly and charming crowds, few glimpse the complex man behind this carefully crafted image. Away from the spotlight, Rieu's life revolves around family, particularly his wife Marjorie, whom he married in 1975 and credits as the bedrock of his success. Not merely a supportive spouse, Marjorie has been his business partner and creative collaborator, helping design the elaborate sets and costumes that define his productions. Their partnership yielded not only musical success but also two sons, Marc and Pierre, both of whom eventually joined the family business in production and management roles. The family-centered nature of his empire extends to his orchestra as well, which he treats more as an extended family than employees. This tight-knit structure has been both a strength and, at times, a burden, with Rieu feeling responsible for the livelihoods of hundreds of people dependent on his continued ability to perform. What fans rarely witnessed were the physical and emotional tolls exacted by his punishing schedule. At its peak, the Rieu enterprise toured relentlessly, sometimes performing in a different city every night for weeks on end. The violinist, despite his energetic stage presence, has battled serious health issues throughout his later career. In 2010, he was forced to postpone several concerts due to a viral infection that led to vestibular neuritis, affecting his balance and requiring months of recovery. More serious was a 2016 heart scare that resulted in multiple shows being canceled while Rieu underwent treatment. Throughout these challenges, he maintained his grueling pace, driven by a combination of passion for performing and responsibility to his musical family. Behind his signature smile, colleagues have occasionally glimpsed the exhaustion and physical pain masked for the benefit of audiences. The COVID-19 pandemic delivered perhaps the most devastating blow to Rieu's carefully constructed world, forcing the cancellation of his beloved tours and separating him from the orchestra members he considers family, the decision. The first public hints of André Rieu's potential retirement came not with a grand announcement, but through subtle changes noticed by his most devoted fans. Concert schedules gradually reduced in scope, with fewer dates and more recovery time built between performances. Interviews began to include reflective comments about legacy and the future, though Rieu carefully avoided definitive statements about stepping away permanently. Behind these public signals lay a private struggle intensifying with each passing season. According to sources close to the maestro, a series of medical consultations in late 2023 delivered sobering news. The physical demands of performing, particularly the specific posture required to play violin for hours while standing, was creating increasingly serious health complications. The specific condition remains private at Rieu's request, but specialists apparently advised him that continuing his traditional performance schedule could lead to permanent damage. The decision to step back from the spotlight was not made impulsively or alone. For months, Rieu gathered his inner circle: family members, key orchestra personnel, and longtime business partners, for a series of emotional meetings in his Maastricht castle. The discussions centered not just on his personal health, but on responsibility to his musical family and millions of fans worldwide. "It was the most difficult decision of my life," Rieu reportedly told his orchestra during a tearful private announcement. "The violin has been my voice since childhood. To consider silence is almost unimaginable." What makes the situation particularly poignant is that his musical abilities remain undiminished, his technical skill and interpretive powers arguably at their peak. Unlike athletes who retire when performance declines, Rieu faces stepping away, while still capable of delivering the musical magic that made him famous. When news finally reached the public through a carefully worded statement about reducing performance commitments and transitioning to new projects, the response was overwhelming. Social media flooded with tributes from fans across generations and continents, many sharing personal stories of how his music had touched their lives. Tickets for what might be his final tour dates sold out within minutes, with some desperate fans paying thousands for the chance to witness his performances one last time. Legacy and impact. The true measure of André Rieu's legacy extends far beyond impressive statistics, though these alone would secure his place in music history. Over 40 million albums sold, countless sold-out concerts, and a business empire valued in the hundreds of millions. What makes his contribution truly exceptional is how he fundamentally altered the relationship between classical music and popular culture. Before Rieu, classical performances were experiencing a troubling trajectory: aging audiences, declining ticket sales, and cultural relevance that seemed increasingly limited to a sophisticated elite. His revolutionary approach proved that orchestral music could remain authentic while becoming accessible, sophisticated while being emotionally direct. Perhaps most significantly, Rieu democratized classical music without dumbing it down. His programs featured challenging pieces performed with technical excellence, but presented in a context that invites rather than intimidates. This approach has inspired a generation of classically trained musicians to rethink the artificial boundaries between serious and popular music. Conservatories that once dismissed his approach now study his techniques for audience engagement. His impact on his hometown of Maastricht has been particularly profound. The annual summer concerts transformed this modest Dutch city into an international tourist destination, with studies showing that Rieu tourism generates over 25 million annually for the local economy. Beyond economics, he put Maastricht on the cultural map, establishing music scholarships and educational programs that will nurture talent long after his final performance. Within the industry, Rieu's business model revolutionized how classical artists approach their careers. By establishing independent production and distribution companies, he demonstrated that classical musicians could maintain artistic control while achieving commercial success, a path subsequently followed by many younger artists. Musicologists have noted that his most profound legacy may be emotional rather than technical. In an art form sometimes criticized for intellectual remoteness, Rieu unapologetically emphasized music's capacity to bring joy, comfort, and emotional connection. "I don't play music," he once famously remarked. "I play emotion." This philosophy resonated particularly during global crises like the COVID-19 pandemic, when his online performances provided solace to millions in isolation, demonstrating classical music's enduring power to heal and unite.